In 1324, one man walked through Egypt. He wasn't invading it. He wasn't trading with it. He was just passing through on his way to Mecca. And he brought so much gold with him, gave so much of it away, that he single-handedly destroyed the Egyptian economy for 12 years. 12 years. The price of gold across the entire Mediterranean world collapsed by 25%.
Gold, it's everywhere.
I can't believe it! Real gold! Grab as much as you can!
Because of one man's generosity on a pilgrimage. His name was Mansa Musa, and the city he left behind? It made London look like a mud puddle. Here's what your history teacher never told you. Your education lied to you, not by accident, by design. Ask yourself this. You can name Greek philosophers, Roman emperors, medieval European kings. But can you name a single African emperor from the same era? The odds are you can't. And that gap in your knowledge? Someone put it there deliberately. In the 19th century, European colonial powers needed a story. They needed justification for slavery, for extraction, for occupation. So, European academics, men like David Hume, who literally wrote that he suspected black people were naturally inferior, built an entire intellectual framework around one idea, that Africa had no history worth remembering. British, French, and Portuguese historians systematically excluded African civilizations from university curricula. They relabeled African achievements as Arab or mysterious. They looked at the ruins of Great Zimbabwe, a massive stone city, and invented a theory that Phoenicians must have built it. Because the alternative, that Africans built something extraordinary, didn't fit the story they were selling. The Mali Empire was one of the greatest casualties of this erasure, a civilization that stretched across 1.2 million square kilometers. An empire that controlled more than half the world's gold supply. An intellectual capital with one of the oldest universities on Earth. Wiped from your textbooks. Reduced to a footnote, or nothing at all. You were robbed. And today, we're taking it back. Close your eyes for a moment. It's 1324. You're standing at the edge of Timbuktu's great market. The smell hits you first. Saffron and dried fish from North Africa, cola nuts, livestock dust, and underneath it all, gold. Not metaphorical gold, actual gold dust, traded by weight, drifting in the air like pollen. The market traders use standardized brass weights to measure it. Every transaction precise, every measure regulated by imperial law. The sound comes next. Thousands of voices in a dozen languages, Arabic, Mande, Berber, Songhai. The clang of smiths, the low drone of scholars reciting texts 2 streets over. A city so alive, it hums. This is Timbuktu. And it isn't some remote desert outpost. It sits at the crossing point of 2 of the most important trade networks on Earth. The Trans-Saharan route runs north, through Morocco, into Spain, into Europe. The Niger River route runs east and west across sub-Saharan Africa. Timbuktu controls both. Every gram of gold, every block of salt, every manuscript moving between continents passes through here. The Mali Empire doesn't just sit on a trade route, it is the trade route. But here's the fact that will make you question everything you learned about the medieval world. While Europe was burying its dead from the Black Plague, while London had open sewers running through streets of mud and thatch, Timbuktu had multi-story stone and mud brick buildings with geometric latticework carved into their facades. It had a system of streets wide enough for loaded camel trains. It had neighborhoods organized by profession. Goldsmiths here, leather tanners there, book merchants on the next block. The Jingareber Mosque was completed in 1327, commissioned by Mansa Musa himself, designed by the Spanish Andalusian architect Abu Ishaq es-Saheli, who Musa brought back from his pilgrimage. It still stands today. The building isn't just beautiful, it's functional. Engineered to stay cool in brutal Saharan heat through passive airflow systems that European architects wouldn't fully understand for centuries. Now walk 2 streets north. You're at Sankore. The Sankore Madrasa, what historians now call the University of Sankore, was operating at full capacity in the 14th century. It enrolled up to 25,000 students. 25,000. At the same time, Oxford University had fewer than 3,000. Sankore was larger than Oxford, by a factor of 8. Students came from across the Islamic world and beyond. They studied astronomy, mathematics, medicine, law, history, and rhetoric. The university held a collection of manuscripts numbering in the hundreds of thousands. Scholars copied, annotated, and debated texts that Europe wouldn't encounter for another 200 years. But here's the fact that will stop you cold. The books didn't belong to the university. They belonged to the families. Timbuktu's wealth was measured not just in gold, but in manuscripts. Owning a library was a status symbol. Wealthy merchant families accumulated private collections of tens of thousands of texts. These weren't religious pamphlets. These were treatises on surgery, algebra, optics, governance, and astronomy. Some of them predate anything preserved in European archives. The trade network Mansa Musa commanded was not regional. It was intercontinental. Salt came south from the Taghaza mines, so valuable it was traded weight for weight with gold. Copper arrived from Takedda, horses from the Maghreb, textiles from Egypt. Kola nuts, ivory, and enslaved people moved north. Cowrie shells from the Indian Ocean arrived as currency. Porcelain from China reached Timbuktu markets. The evidence shows Mali maintained active commercial relationships stretching from the Atlantic coast to the ports of East Africa. Arab geographers of the era, men like Ibn Battuta, who visited the empire in 1352, recorded their astonishment in detail. Ibn Battuta wrote that Mali had complete and general safety. Travelers didn't fear robbery, justice was swift and public. The roads functioned. What did Timbuktu have in 1300 that London wouldn't have for another 200 years? A functioning university system, public hospitals staffed by trained physicians, and street lighting. London didn't have organized street lighting until the 1400s, and even then, citizens had to hang lanterns outside their own doors by law. The University of London wasn't founded until 1826. Medieval European medical care consisted largely of bloodletting and prayer. Timbuktu had formalized medical schools, producing physicians who wrote case studies and surgical manuals. The manuscripts recovered from private collections include detailed anatomical diagrams and pharmacological guides referencing plants from across the continent. This wasn't folk medicine. This was structured, transmitted, documented medical knowledge. But here's the fact that will make you furious. When European scholars rediscovered ancient Greek medical texts in the Renaissance, many came through Arabic translations. Those Arabic translations, preserved and annotated by scholars in cities like Timbuktu, were the bridge. African scholars helped save the medical knowledge Europe now claims as its own classical inheritance. How wealthy was Mansa Musa in today's money? Economists and historians have estimated his wealth at approximately $400 billion in adjusted modern terms. That figure makes him the wealthiest individual in recorded human history. It exceeds the combined net worth of Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Bill Gates. This wasn't abstract wealth sitting in a bank. It was physical. The Mali Empire sat atop the Bambouk and Bure goldfields, the source of an estimated half of the Old World's entire gold supply in the 14th century. Mansa Musa didn't just have gold, he controlled gold. He determined how much flowed into the global economy. He was, in effect, the world's central bank. What happened to the global gold price when Mansa Musa walked through Cairo? His 1324 pilgrimage to Mecca was not a quiet religious journey. It was a procession of 60,000 people. He brought 12,000 enslaved servants, each carrying 4 pounds of gold. He brought 500 heralds carrying gold staffs. He brought 80 camels loaded with gold dust, each carrying 300 pounds. He gave it away, freely, to beggars in Cairo, to mosques, to anyone who asked. The result was economic catastrophe for Egypt and the wider Mediterranean world. The gold price collapsed by 25%. Inflation surged. Egyptian merchants and traders lost their savings. The economy didn't recover for 12 years. Contemporary Arab chroniclers recorded it. The Egyptian official Al-Umari interviewed Cairene merchants who remembered it decades later. This isn't legend. This is documented economic history. What did Mali have that Rome never achieved? A postal relay system, standardized weights and measures enforced across a 1.2 million square kilometer empire, and a supreme court, a functioning judicial body that operated independently of the emperor, applying Islamic law consistently from one end of the empire to the other. Rome had roads, but no postal system that reached its provinces reliably. Rome never standardized weights empire-wide. And Roman law, however sophisticated, was administered by local governors with enormous personal discretion. The Mali Empire ran on systems. It ran on institutions. It ran on documented, replicable processes. That is the definition of a sophisticated state. No empire lasts forever, and the story of Mali's collapse is not just tragedy, it's a warning. The seeds were planted from inside. After Mansa Musa died in 1337, the empire fractured over succession. His sons fought each other. Provincial governors broke away. The Tuareg Berbers seized Timbuktu in 1433. The Songhai Empire absorbed the eastern territories by 1468. What had been a unified continental power splintered into competing states, weakened, exposed. But here's the fact that should break your heart. The final blow didn't come from within. It came from the outside. In 1591, the Sultan of Morocco sent an army, equipped with European firearms, 1,500 miles across the Sahara Desert to destroy Timbuktu. The Saadian army defeated the Songhai forces at the Battle of Tondibi. And then they did something that has no justification in any moral framework. They burned the libraries. 700,000 manuscripts. Some estimates go higher. Texts on mathematics, astronomy, medicine, law, philosophy, history. Knowledge accumulated across 5 centuries of scholarship. Knowledge that had no copies anywhere else on Earth. They burned it. Some families hid manuscripts in the walls of their homes, buried them in the desert, fled with them south, deeper into Africa. Over the next 400 years, descendants of those scholars preserved what they could, passing the collections down through generations. In the early 2000s, researchers discovered hundreds of thousands of surviving manuscripts, some in basements in Timbuktu, some in family homes across Mali. Then, in 2012, jihadist groups seized Timbuktu. and they burned
The
more.
exchange rate just doubled.
Timbuktu has been destroyed twice by people who feared what was written in those pages. Think about that. Think about what was in those manuscripts that made two different armies, 5 centuries apart, decide that the safest thing to do was burn them. Here's the question I want you to sit with. It's 1591. Timbuktu is burning. But imagine it doesn't. Imagine the Moroccan army never crosses the Sahara. Imagine the manuscripts survive. Imagine the Songhai Empire stabilizes and rebuilds on the institutional foundations Mali left behind. Imagine West Africa, already wealthy beyond anything Europe has ever seen, enters the 17th century intact. Now imagine it's 1600. West African states hold half the world's gold supply. They have functioning universities. They have documented legal systems, trade networks, and administrative infrastructure. They have cities. They have diplomats. European colonial powers arrived with one major advantage: guns, financed by the Atlantic trade. But guns cost money. Slave voyages needed investors. The entire system of Atlantic colonialism depended on African states being politically fragmented, economically desperate, and militarily outgunned. What if they weren't? What if the Mali Empire, or its successor, had lasted another 200 years in full strength? What if West Africa entered the age of European expansion as a unified, wealthy, institutionally sophisticated civilization? Would the Portuguese have dared to raid the coast? Would the Atlantic slave trade have been possible at all? Would the entire history of the last 400 years, the colonialism, the extraction, the deliberate underdevelopment of a continent, have unfolded differently? The Mali Empire didn't fail because Africans couldn't build civilization. It failed because civilization got in the way of someone else's business model. And the greatest act of that business model wasn't the chains or the ships. It was this: convincing you, in a classroom, that there was nothing there to destroy in the first place. Now you know differently. Tell me, if the Mali Empire had lasted another 200 years, would European colonialism have been possible at all? Drop your answer below. And if this video made you feel something, you already know what to do.